Welcome to the Top Order podcast. Just me, Stu, and Matthew Hayden's hat this evening on the Top Order podcast. We're going to review an epic test at the home of cricket, the emotions of that fourth innings. Ben Stokes' legend grows. India's missed opportunities. We'll talk a little bit of batting brilliance from KL Rahul and Joe Root. We'll also talk the battle of the speedsters, Jasprit Bumrah and Jofra Archer's long-awaited return to Test cricket. And we'll look ahead to the fourth test at Old Trafford. All coming up on the Top Order podcast. Stay tuned. Well, Lippy, it's actually not Haydos's hat. This is a hat that I had to pay an exorbitant amount of money for, actually, to protect my bald head from the fierce sun at the home of cricket. I was, went down with my wife for the second day. I'd spent the first day in the nice shady climes of the pavilion, but sat in one of the stands in the sun with my wife on day two, and my head was going to burn. So a last minute purchase from the Lord's shop. But look, really keen to talk to you about a test match which had a little bit of everything, including some needle. End of play. What was it? Third day with in England just facing one over at the close of play. Zach Crawley with a few theatrics, and Shubman Gill, after he'd received Swedish hot towel massage and spa treatments on the field the day before, took offence to that. But ultimately we'll come on to that probably, and some of that edge that was clear in this test match, in a series that's been played in pretty good spirit. And I think even at the conclusion of this test match, you saw the players, shaking hands and exchanging some genuine pleasantries, I think. But first and foremost, I lived the roller coaster of that test match as an England fan for the duration of it. Certainly didn't think it was going to go that deep into the fifth day at the close of day 4. But as a neutral, picking up probably the decent highlights packages over there in New Zealand. What did you make of the test match?
Fantastic. Yeah, honestly, I mean, one, your hat is fantastic to start with. I'm very pleased that you've kept it on. You threatened that you were going to take it off, but please leave it on. So we did get those pictures of you and your lovely wife smiling away on the Slack channel. You sent them through to us, and I think we were all very jealous over here, even though you've said it was very, very hot. But honestly, I mean, what an epic test match. You said it before. If this game, if this match is anything to go by, there's all this talk about Test cricket. I mean, the game's in great shape if this is what we can look forward to, because it really was 5 days of back and forth. We had the gripping finish, we had the conflict that you said, we had heroes on both sides. Even Jadeja at the end almost kind of got India across the line after them being so far out of it, but at one stage on that fifth day. But also, I think we really saw the human side of a lot of people in this game. As you say, it was a really hard-fought game, but you could see complete respect at the end when the English guys were consoling Siraj. You saw his emotions. Him and Bumrah had fought so hard with Jadeja there at the end. That everyone, I feel like, put so much into this test match. And, I don't know, it really reflected for us as fans watching on. So, absolutely brilliant. I mean, take us through what you thought, I guess, going through those emotions of that fourth innings, because it was really, I mean, I saw India, 192 to chase and went, this isn't 192. Like, the pitch hasn't deteriorated this much. India's just going to cruise this, in the same way that Washington Sundar thought that they were going to cruise it. And then, at what point, I suppose, did you start to go, oh, maybe England's a chance here?
Yeah, look, I think there was probably a couple of occasions where you thought England were a chance. Having been at the game for the first couple of days, I think notable that England won the toss and didn't do what they've been doing pretty successfully. So I think they read the wicket, I think, pretty well to decide to make first use of it. Although, you'd argue that with a team's achieving parity across the first innings, it just turned into a shootout anyway. But look, I think that aside, it did deteriorate a little bit on days 4 and 5, and probably helped England's bowling attempt in that second innings. I think I really started to believe. I think when when we took that kind of little, that little sort of cluster of wickets between 40 odd and 60. So taking Karen Nair, Shubman Gill, and Akash Deep. And then Rishabh Pant as well to get them to 5 for 70. You thought that was pretty big. Obviously, then a big wicket of KL Rahul, but you always knew a partnership was going to come along. You probably just didn't think it was going to be as late down the order as that partnership was. And I think when you're chasing a score of 190 odd, it is really one partnership, isn't it? When you think, or 100 partnership, and then unless you've got a massive amount of ducks, you would hope that the rest of your batting order somehow summons up 70 or 80 runs. So it was really nip and tuck, I think, and certainly then that second little cluster of wickets, I think really helped England as well. Chris Wokes, showing his value, and I'm sure we might come on to that sort of England bowling lineup. But yeah, it was tough to kind of really believe at the close of play on day 4 that India might not just sort of pull together that partnership that they needed. But yeah, I think really those key wickets of KL Rahul, the skipper getting him, and Rishabh Pant, Jofra Archer getting him late on that evening with just a fantastic delivery after an aggressive start to his innings from Pant. Those were probably the two key wickets for me. But I thought for Ravindra Jadeja batted really, really well. The commentary, I think there was a bit of frustration potentially. Ravi Shastri's voice, thinking, what's his game plan? But at the end of the day, it was clear by the end of the innings what his game plan was, and it nearly worked. So you've got to say to him, he obviously set his stall out to try and face 80% of the deliveries for a long period of time with 2 or 3 tail enders, but for a little bit of brilliance, he could have well have pulled it off at the end for India as well.
Oh, I mean, totally. I've got no problem with the way he went about things. I mean, they looked. This is going to sound weird, but they looked. I sort of thought those tailenders, Siraj and Bumrah, actually looked relatively comfortable in facing 2 balls at the time. Bumrah, I think, will be kicking himself with his shot. I mean, he obviously got a nice one away off. Was it Stokes earlier or Archer? It was off Archer, wasn't it? Earlier in his innings. But then, hits one up in the air when Jadeja's obviously the ones that they decided was going to score the runs. And then, look, I still can't believe that ball hit Siraj's stumps. I mean, when he plays that, it was like the stump had a magnet in it or something. It was just such a weird. He's played that. I don't think he played it. You're not going to play it much better than that. He's sort of been punished for having two soft hands trying to not get caught, but it's just taken this weird route behind and hit the stumps. So, yeah, I don't have a huge problem with that at all. And, Jadeja, I think I've said many times, when he comes in, I sort of feel like it's really unfair when you're playing against India and he just rocks in. I mean, he came in at 6th in this, 7 in this innings because of Akash Deep being the night watchman.
Yeah.
But I totally agree with you about. I mean, obviously we talked before the start of that 5th day, and we were like, you were playing it down as you always do. But I think you were right. Like India with Pant and Rahul, who had looked so good in the first innings, all they had to do was build 50, 60 run partnership, and you're thinking India's home here. But for Archer to get Pant, and then I think for me the big one is KL Rahul, because he's looked so good in this series, and for Stokes to kind of get that LBW to hoop it in the way he did, and even for him to sort of have the ball in his hands at that moment and be the one. I don't know. I mean, this to me really feels like one of those games where the Ben Stokes legend grows. I mean, before this game, during the series, I think you and Jamie have been talking a little bit about Stokes. I feel like there was a bit of noise around whether he was contributing enough, whether his batting has been good enough. Can we trust his body? There's sort of always these conversations around Stokes. But And even me, I'm as guilty as anyone of looking at his stats and going, oh, he averages 35 with the bat, 32 with the ball. Is he really as good as, people talk about him? But then there's games like this where it feels like he's just so determined to get the win that, he gets a crucial run out. He contributes with the bat, not huge scores, but he gets runs with the bat in both innings. And then, in the moments when you really, really needed him, he's the one with the ball in his hands. And he's kind of just got that Neil Wagner-esque vibe to him where he's like, I've got the ball and I'm just going to keep bowling until I do what I need for the team. So I don't know. Talk to me about Ben Stokes.
Yeah, well, look, I'm going to call this out, and yeah, Jamie, I think, is sunning himself on a beach somewhere, but he actually uttered the words in our Slack channel, is it time to drop Stokes? So I just I'm going to call him out on that. Yes, that's a private Slack channel, but as I said to him in the Slack channel, that is treasonous language. And look, I think what we probably need to factor in, and I'd love to get Baldy's view on this, and we are going to catch up on Sunday and talk about this West Indies Australia test. We'll probably touch on the New Zealand T20s as well. So we've got lots of cricket to cover. But the thing I'd like to really ask Baldy is, is there some way of quantifying what he adds as a captain? Because I think that there's a couple of things. You saw it on the stump mics, or certainly I saw it on the stump mics on that final day. Jofra Archer sort of jogged in from long off to pick up a ball that, had gone for an easy single. And they were at the stage of the game where they weren't trying to turn the strike over. And they weren't going to run a two. But Archer ambles in. Stokes turned around on the field and had a go at him and said, Jofra, show some bloody energy. But I think he couldn't do that unless he had, unless he did that and lived by that example the whole time. And I think what you see from England is they chase the ball right to the Toblerone, even if they're going to be 10, 15, 20 metres off getting to it, because that's the ethos that they want to see. You couldn't get the ball out of his hand. He bowled 44 overs in this test match. I would say he takes one worldie of a catch per 5-match series and probably one run out or piece of individual brilliance in the field. So straight away, you've got whatever the points you want to put onto his batting or bowling average that kind of add that up. And then just really leading by example, which meant that, when he asked Jofra Archer to bowl 1 or 2 extra overs at 89 miles an hour or thereabouts, when he asked Bryden Cast to come in and test out, halfway down the track, to try the bouncer theory just for a couple of overs, no one can turn around to him and say, I'm not going to do that, because he's led by that level of example. And I think even when you just look at the broad figures here, 44 overs, took 5 wickets, an average of just over 22 in this test match. That's a really, really solid performance. Only really beaten by the England bowlers, by Archer, who took his wickets a shade over 21 in this test match. And again, between them, that they cracked open those crucial wickets throughout the course of the test match. We go into the first innings, that run out of Pant that we talked about.
Huge.
And we talk about, Yashasvi Jaiswal, and then Washington Sundar when they were just sort of forming a partnership. And then in that second innings, we'll go on about it, but, Stokes has got out KL Rahul. He's got out the stubborn Bumrah. So look, I think his stats, even in this test match, you might not look at them and say 44 and 30 odd. Is that good enough from your number 5 or your number 6? But it's the sum of all of those parts and what he brings from a captaincy perspective as well. So if Jamie still wants to drop him, we can have a robust conversation about that next time we catch up on the pod.
I don't think you'll need that anymore.
Can we talk a little bit about India? We've seen really. Look, another masterful batting performance from KL Rahul. Good innings from Rishabh and Ravi Jadeja as well throughout the course of the Test match. I thought Karen Nye looked pretty good in the first innings as well. And then, second dig, we see Jadeja get runs again. He's a good guy to have coming in at number 6 or 7, obviously 7 with the night watcher. They didn't actually do that much wrong in this Test match, did they, India?
I think you can make a fairly strong argument that they played the better cricket in the Test. I mean, they created more chances with the ball. They were in better positions with the bat, at least in that first innings, to kind of kick on and really hammer home. But they just sort of couldn't make the most of those opportunities. And I think if you look at those big moments, England won those big moments because, I mean, you mentioned it before, that first innings, India's 248 for 3, kind of absolutely cruising. Rahul's looking fantastic. Rishabh Pant's looking in total control. And then, Rishabh Pant runs himself out. Great. You've still got to give credit to Stokes. He hits the stumps. But, I thought it was really interesting actually after the match. And this kind of ties into what I was talking about with the guys looking human at the end of the game. And that, KL Rahul was really honest about what happened in that moment and sort of talked that the two of them had talked a couple of overs earlier, and Rahul was saying, look, I'd quite like to get to my milestone before the break, which, I don't know, I just found that really fascinating, that not in a negative way at all, just sort of like, man, this guy actually is a real person. Like, he thinks about the same things that we're all thinking about, even though, like, he's a top level player that's completely locked in. And, we saw it with Joe Root, right? Joe Root gets stranded on 99 at the end of day one, and they almost laughed about it. I mean, it's sort of, I don't know, just the way that the players' emotions in this match kind of, just ebbed and flow was really, really interesting. But Rahul and Pant, that was the opportunity to then go really, really big, and even actually after those two guys went out, Reddy and Jadeja were in and building a partnership as well, and I don't know. I know I've fought this whole series selection wise. Like, you don't worry about those guys at the end, like India's tail falling away, but it did really hurt them in this game. They were they got to 376 for 6, and then nice catch from Smith down the leg side to get Jadeja, and they're all out for 387. 11 runs later, they're all out, and suddenly it is back on an even keel. You think again, if India could have just snatched a 40-run lead and then gone about and done what they did, Washington Sundar comes out, takes 4. I don't know. I just feel like they were in better positions at so many points in this Test match. They dropped a couple of catches. Pope was dropped on 0. Smith was dropped in single figures. I don't know. I really think they'll be gutted when they sort of look back at this Test match and think it is a massive missed opportunity. Even, I don't know, maybe you want to talk about Bryden Cast, that partnership with Smith and him in the first innings, in the way that again, India, Bumrah comes out in the second morning, has a real impact, knocks over Root, and you're thinking, okay, India's about to roll them here. But, England was able to contribute and find a way to just stay in the game, and then really hit home when it really mattered.
Yeah, look, absolutely. And I think it probably was some of those key moments. I also think, and we can come on to talk about it in a sec, I think England will probably look back at their second innings shots. I think, Zach Crawley, Harry Brook, Joe Root. I think we'll all kind of have a little bit of a, whether or not they'll admit this or not, given the way that they play cricket, the way that Harry Brook had, hit a massive 6, he'd ramped successfully. Joe Root plays the sweep pretty well on the whole, but he'll be disappointed to have misjudged the one that he did. Zach Crawley, did well to see off probably the real new ball threat, and then just kind of innocuously, hits one to gully in that second innings. But yeah, going back to that England first dig, I made my wife, get up and get to the ground in plenty of time. I didn't want to be missing Root bring up his 3 figures at the start of day 2. Yeah, unfortunately, didn't go on and make a big one. But Jamie Smith, I think, when you look at it in the context of this game, a game where, runs didn't come quickly for any of the sides. Highest run rate of any of the 4 innings was England in that first innings, going along a pretty pedestrian for them 3.4. Jamie Smith scored at nearly a run a ball, 51 off 56. Really took the opportunity to counter-attack and put the pressure back on India, I thought, on that second morning. And one of my mates texted me at the ground, who was obviously following, I think, on the radio rather than the TV whilst he was at work, and said, how good is Bryden Cast looking? And he looked brilliant. He had a couple of shots that he wanted to get away. He really wanted to get away a cut shot, but he was patient. He waited for balls in his area. And I think that is probably one of the the things that you alluded to in terms of India's lower order not really wagging. England with Jamie Smith and Bryden Cast, arguably Stokes at 6 as well. That kind of real middle order engine room, did get England to what turned out to be a vital first innings score. If they'd have been bowled out for 300. Which could have looked that the case at 4 for 170 with that Indian attack, then it could be a different game. So Carson and Smith for me looked brilliant. Smith just continues to impress, both with bat and gloves, for England. Lip, can we talk a little bit about a couple of the, I suppose, elephants in the room? We've got issues with cricket balls and we've got issues with over rates again. I'll be perfectly honest, you kind of at the ground, certainly on the first 2 days, you knew about the over rates because there was at Lord's, the old slow hand clap, both on days 1 and 2, particularly when there was, excessive visits from the 12th man, etc. I think 83 overs bowled in the first day and only 74 or 75 or something on day 2, which is, which was noticeable. But, a big part of that was this continual need to try and change, a cricket ball on a pitch that also was probably pretty docile as well. So a combination of a soft ball and a docile pitch led for some attritional cricket. As a neutral, was that noticeable? Is that something that's annoying you, or is this just something that's kind of, I guess, filling a news cycle in between this and the 4th test at Old Trafford?
Look, I think it is annoying. I mean, we've been talking about it for years, right? It's annoying that you can't get 90 overs in a day, and I suppose as someone who's who played the game at club level at least, I don't quite understand how it needs to take this long and how it, but it clearly does. Like, unless you play in a place where you're bowling spin over and over again more consistently, every place you go around the world, it doesn't seem like it's 1 or 2 teams mucking around. It's everywhere you go that always is slow over rates. We very rarely get 90 overs. We certainly don't get 90 overs in the allotted time. It's always that extra half an hour that they're allowed to kind of take to make up the time. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know enough about cricket balls probably and the science of them and all of that kind of stuff to know. But when you see, there's been a lot of people complaining about this, Jukes, right? It really does seem like there are enough people now, not just the players playing the game and kind of, people sometimes talk about gamesmanship, right? They're going, oh well, the ball stopped swinging. We'll see if we can get a new one or something like that. The ball's gone a little bit soft. Let's try and get a new one out of the container and hope that we can get something out of this. But yeah, there's enough people around the game that are kind of going, this is just not good enough anymore, and it's hurting the cricket that we see. So that I think is a problem. If the good judges are going, that this is an issue, and even then, as you say, that flows on to ball coming out, wasting time. And I don't know, you said it before, you're probably a better person to talk about it if you were in the ground, because I think back to the tests that I've been at recently in New Zealand, I don't feel like I've noticed the game being slow, but you said it was at Lord's. You felt it was dragging on?
Yeah, I think it was, look, and there's some mitigating factors, right? It was really, really warm, but I think that for me, that the thing that really does great is just the amount of times that 2 or 3 minutes before a scheduled drinks break, you've got a 12th man coming out onto the field with literally bananas, protein shakes, drinks, towels, all kinds of stuff. And personally, I think that the cricket ball I'll come on to, but I think in terms of the overrate conversation, the ICC really needs to take some responsibility for large parts of this, in my view. And this is not trying to say I don't disagree that the players have been woeful as well. But let's face it, right? Let's look at the facts here. The umpires are employed by the ICC. They have the ability to use a lot more discretion when it comes to these stoppages. They can literally, or as far as I'm aware, it's still the convention that if you want a drink or a new pair of gloves or a calcium tablet or whatever it is, you ask the umpire, you say, umpire, do you mind at the end of the over if I please get a drink? And I think the umpires have got to say, no, we've got a scheduled drinks break in 5 minutes. You can hang on. Just like, you and I do to our children when they're asking to stop for a toilet break on a motorway. We'll say, yeah, we'll go to the next services. But the other thing is that they've got an in-game penalty. So they can issue a warning and then they can actually issue a 5-run penalty. So for me, I find it ludicrous that if that mechanism isn't used in the game, and then after the game, we're deducting teams' points from the World Test Championship. And this isn't just because England have been docked some points. Australia have been docked points and I think missed out on a World Test Championship final because of that 2 or 3 episodes ago. So this is not a one single team problem. But if the umpires aren't using an in-game penalty that's available to them to pull up the teams on these things, then it seems strange that after the game, they're then getting docked points. Let's start to use that in-game penalty. And to put this into perspective, I think England would have lost at least 10, if not 15 runs due to their tardiness in this game, which would have made it a lot bloody closer. So I think we've got to stop to use those penalties. And I think that the umpires have also got to take some responsibility for saying, no, this would be your 3rd pair of gloves in the last 40 minutes. You can wait till drinks, or you can wait until there's a bigger stoppage in play. Because I think the fans are starting to get really, really annoyed with how that works. The other thing is there's always someone on the boundary as well. So go and swap with your mate and go and get a drink whilst you're down on the on the boundary. So I think there's a number of solutions that we can have. Or even, you're allowed to leave the field, but you're not allowed a sub on. Go and get a drink, that's fine. But you miss the rest of this over, and I guarantee we wouldn't then see we wouldn't see this if you were going to be a fielder down even for 3 or 4 minutes. So. I think, in summary, ICC, I think, have got a lot to answer for. Their employees are the guys that should be really policing this game and making it sort of the imperative that we see as much play as we can in every hour that's out there.
The World Test Championship penalties don't seem to be having that impact. I think that's they clearly don't care. And I think it is a bit weird that they don't care, personally, because I think this England side's a good team and they've got a reasonable kind of draw. If they, we'll see what the Ashes holds for them, but Australia's certainly looking vulnerable at the moment. And, England's looking like they can be a decent side. They've certainly been a decent side at home for a while. So I think they should be thinking, I know that they don't. It doesn't seem like they do think about that, that far ahead. But I think they should be thinking, we've got a chance to be in the mix here in this World Test Championship, and the fact that they're just clearly not worried about those penalties. They never have been. That I think that's an issue. So I'm intrigued by your thinking there. Can we go back to Can we go back to some of the cricket on the field, because I think there's a lot more people to shout out, and you mentioned him before, Joe Root. I'm not sure how much praise we can continue to pile on him, because we sort of have said, I feel like, everything over the past few years, other than to kind of repeat that he's just fantastic. And when I was thinking, what can I actually say about Joe Root? I went back and I saw because I saw some stat that he's made 20 hundreds since the start of 2021, and I sort of thought, okay, like that's obviously an incredible number. Len Hutton, Clive Lloyd, Mike Hussey scored 19 in their whole career. Gooch, Mark Waugh, Aravinda de Silva, 20 in their whole career. AB de Villiers, 22. Andrew Strauss, 21. By my count, only 46 men in the history of Test cricket have more than 20 Test hundreds. And he's done that in 4.5 years for Joe Root. And in saying all of this, I'd assumed, and I still kind of do, that he's going to smash all the records, right? He's just taken most catches. He's got over 13,000 Test runs now. But then he's 35 at the end of this year. I mean, maybe he won't smash. Like Tendulkar's 5,100s still feels like a long way away. I mean, how much longer do you think that he's got here, Joe Root? Because he still looks fantastic. And if he can continue this form, again, asking him to score another 20 hundreds in the next 4 years feels like that's a bit rough, but that's the pace he would have to just about do to kind of beat Tendulkar's 5,100s, which again kind of puts into perspective how amazing that record is in itself.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you just look at the maths of this, he's played 156 games, so he needs. I think Tendulkar played 200 even, didn't he? So I think he's got 44 games to kind of get to a similar level. That's going to take 3 years with the amount of Test cricket that England play. And if he continues with those conversion rates, then yes, he will go past that. Yeah, he will go past that figure. He might not go past the average because I think he's at 51 or thereabouts now. Tendulkar pretty close to 54. It's going to be quite tough to kind of bring your body of work up by 3 runs over that period of time, I think. But again, I'd be really keen to get the sort of stats around how many of those games were on pitches where average scores are higher and all that kind of stuff. And that's not to diminish. It would just be really interesting to actually look at some of the devil in that detail. I think the thing that I'm looking at is when we see Joe Root come out of the slips and go in field in the outfield, because I think he has had a couple of little back issues, I believe. It often wears, a back support, often wears a jumper, even on a really, really hot day, I think, to keep the back warm. So, I think as an England fan, I'm always nervously looking at, does he, get himself out of a position where he's got to kind of crouch down 300 times a day and set himself for a slips catch because he's struggling with that back. And I think he's also said that he does want to, he does want to sort of, have some, some T20 cricket at some point, and kind of, get back into that, that format. I certainly think, he's got a lot to offer still in the 50 over game for England.
Definitely.
So look, I just hope he maintains that kind of youthful passion that he still really seems to have. And most importantly, he seems to want to have it for England in Test cricket. He talks about wanting to, win games of cricket and score runs for England in Tests. He's had a little bit of a dalliance with the IPL, but he's not really kind of gone all out to put himself in that particular shop window. Even though, he's got a pretty reasonable strike rate, considering he's played 100 games and some of those were before the real crash bang wallop. He's at 130 or thereabouts with his T20 strike rate. So, look, I personally think he will go past Tendulkar. But I don't think that will be necessarily the reason he does that. I just think he seems to have the passion for the game and scoring runs. Like, he doesn't seem like the kind of guy who's going to set that out as his goal. I think his goal is going to be to just continue to score runs for as long as he enjoys it. And I think the other factor is they're going to need, I think, a little bit of a transition period, because we are going to see Wokes go. We are going to see Stokes go. We are probably going to see Root go within a couple of years of each other, and I think they're going to need just that little bit of blend as the Ducketts and the Smiths and perhaps the Atkinsons, find their way into the experienced statesman part of the dressing room. They'll need that transition, and I think Root's perfectly placed to do that and bridge that old and new. But yeah, back to number one in the world rankings. So that probably says all you need to say about where his form and skill is at the moment for this England team.
Do you want to give some of those bowlers a bit of a shout out? You mentioned them a bit before. I mean, you must be stoked with that. Even just Archer got through this test and looked really good. Speeds were good. I mean, yeah, a lot was talked about. Oh, he hasn't played a red ball game for so long, and then he comes in, plays the 4-dayer in county championship, and then comes in and does what he did, and Stokes to throw him the ball again in those biggest moments. It was who do we want bowling, and more often than not, it was Jofra.
Yeah, well, Stokes referenced this. It was the anniversary of the England. No. Well, we this is context here, Stu. It was the anniversary to the day of the England World Cup final victory in 2019.
Tie.
I can't remember who that was against. But yeah, he said that was deliberately why he was handed the ball on that day ahead of Cars, who'd bowled really well the night before. 5 for 107 off 39 overs in this game. If you listen to Archer afterwards as well, I don't think he ever doubted he was going to play Test cricket again. I don't know whether you've seen this down under, but Jonathan Agnew, who's not making any friends with his current England team with some of his comments, to be honest, had made a wager with made a wager with Jonathan Agnew that Jofra Archer wouldn't play again. Jonathan Agnew has said that he would not play Test cricket again, and there was a hat as part of this bet. So when Archer was picked for the Test match, Ben Stokes turned up for an interview with Agnew and made Agnew wear this hat. Jofra Archer then turned up in that very hat to do the post-match sort of interviews with Jonathan Agnew, and was pointed and actually said the words "pissed off" live on TV, which I thought was brilliant, which you can't do in England. I know you can in New Zealand. And he showed a little bit of fire and said, it was only you that was doubting whether or not I was going to play Test cricket again. And also voiced a little bit of frustration that he feels he's ready to kind of be let go. And the England management are still very much monitoring workloads, and they've got, the number of overs they're wanting to bowl mapped out apparently until December. It'd be interesting to see whether we see him at Old Trafford, which is a pitch that historically has probably had a little bit more pace than others in England. So, yeah, going to be really interesting to see what they do, but they've got a long break. But yeah, the atmosphere in the ground, Stu, when the Tannoy announcement went up that he was gonna bowl on, bowl in that first innings, India first innings, the roar every time the speed gun was over 90 miles an hour was there. I think his quickest delivery was 94.6 or something like that. So he really wound it up. And what was really, I think, encouraging as well is the average speeds of his spells were pretty consistent. They were a little bit lower in that fourth innings, but I think you've got to put some context into that England were probably trying to bowl to a plan, particularly to Jadeja, so they didn't necessarily maybe need to go as hard at him, and they were saving those real effort deliveries for when it really, really mattered at the last couple of balls of the over, when they were perhaps they'd got Jasprit Bumrah on strike, for example. So all indications for me that he can get back to playing test cricket. I think he'll need to be carefully managed and treated like the Ferrari that he is, and not the tractor that they tried to treat him as going back to the Bay Oval, actually, wasn't it? Where I think he bowled 40 odd overs on a really flat deck there, and that kind of broke him really. So important that he's well managed, but I think that we'll see that from Ben Stokes over the course of the next couple of years. So buzzing to see him. And you mentioned Cars as well. I just thought, he's really sort of already got his boarding pass, I think, for the Ashes. And he's probably, I think, gone ahead of, a couple of guys. I think he's gone ahead of Josh Tongue now, based on this performance. And I think there's a question mark around whether or not Atkinson would be preferred to him if they were both equally fit at this stage. I think long term Atkinson will be fantastic, but I think you're gonna have to kind of really have a word with Brydon Cast to get the ball out of his hand, especially with a 9-day break between this Test match and the next one.
Oh, I've always been really, really impressed by Cass. I mean, I thought he was really good at here in New Zealand when he sort of got that opportunity to play these games. And I think your ideal attack for England, Atkinson slots in to the Wokes role. That's the role that he ends up, taking for England. I think that's the one you want him, because then you can still have Cass, then you can still have Jofra if he's fit enough, or Mark Wood, or whoever it turns out to be. Because I think in the role that they're kind of playing, I think Cass is doing a better job and would be ahead of Atkinson for me. He just looks dangerous. You mentioned Karen Nair before. He looks like he totally has his number, even though, as you say, he looks like someone who has made a decent fist of Test cricket, in his returns, even though he hasn't kind of kicked on. He looks the part, at least to me, when he's out there in the middle. But Brydon Cast is the one that has made him, really sort of, he's been able to really hone in on some of maybe Nair's weaknesses and go, actually, we're going to target you here. And for the most part, it's worked for him. So, I think he's fantastic. And going back to Archer, it's funny when I watch him, I'm like, he doesn't look like he's that quick, or he should be that quick. And then, 94 miles an hour, everything's over 90 miles. And then, the way he's able to just kiss it off the surface sometimes, and it just flies. I mean, there was that one in the second, in the final innings where it, went over Smith's head, down for 4, that bouncer. Yeah, I mean, it's a scary sight. He's not someone I would want to face, just because, as you say, he sort of ambles in the same way that sometimes Bumrah seems to just, like, how is Bumrah so fast? And then just suddenly it's on you, and you got to be playing it. And I don't know. Like, if we're looking ahead to the 4th Test, both sides, I think, have got big decisions with those two bowlers, because again, Bumrah comes in. I mean, Baldy tried to float the Ewing theory to me, which I don't know if that means anything to you, sort of popularized by Bill Simmons. Essentially, Patrick Ewing, New York Knicks NBA basketball player. The theory is that the team can sometimes perform better without their superstar. And, if you look at the series, India's lost both their games where Bumrah's played. They won the game that he didn't. But I think that there's maybe a conversation to be had around how the other bowlers are used when Bumrah is there, and in a way that can kind of instill the confidence in them. But I can't get behind any theory that thinks India would be better off without Jasprit Bumrah, who is I think under all reckoning, you've got to say that he's the number one bowler in the world. The movement he gets, the consistent danger he presents to every single batter. Plus, he's just seems like the perfect culture guy. Like, everyone wants to get around him. Everyone, he brings so much to the team as well, just with his presence. He's always seems to be, he's fired up and in the moment, but he always seems to have a smile on his face quite often as well. So, I don't know. There's no case, I don't think, to be made where they're better without him. And I think, going into this 4th Test now, thinking, he's only going to play 3 of these and you're 2-1 down, I think you have to kind of play him again, don't you? I mean, but then again, we thought that after the first Test when they were 1-0 down, and they decided, look, management-wise, we have to, this is more important. So, I don't know, fascinating questions for both sides going into that 4th Test.
Yeah, I mean, you've heard heard rumours that they were going to play him in 1, 3, and 5. I mean, that sounds a little bit stupid if you're 2-1 down, not to play him in 4, because by 5 it might might be all over. So I think if they think he's in their best side, which he clearly is, then he has to play. Play 4. Washington Sundar's done himself no harm. And I think, Old Trafford, is a ground where, you do occasionally, see a couple of spinners play. So I think really that the call for India is going to be around, what they do, and in terms of rest and rotation of their seamers. I think given that they brought Bumrah back in for this one, Akash Deep looks like the kind of bowler that can bowl a number of overs and didn't bowl too many in that England second innings as well. If they wanted to, they could go with the same side. And look, I think we alluded to it earlier on. This was a close game of cricket. So I think for both sides, really, England will be enforced into at least one change, with Shoaib Bashir obviously breaking his little finger on his non-bowling hand. Liam Dawson, Hampshire left arm spinner, who's recently come back into the one-day fold for England, took 4 for, I think, a couple of games ago. Look, I think he comes back in directly for Bashir. And then for England, I think it's just going to be a case of what do they want to do with their bowling resources? Do they want to shuffle it up a little bit due to workloads and fitness, and who's feeling good in 9 days' time? I don't see them making any changes to the batting. I know we said it before the last test, and I said before the last test I'd have made a change with Bethel coming in for Pope. I thought Pope actually did pretty well in the first innings of this game. I don't see them making those changes. For me, it will just be what they do with the bowling attack, with Atkinson potentially fit and ready to go, with Josh Tongue, you're still in the squad, Sam Cook still in the squad. So they might have a shuffle of the seamers, and it's difficult to predict, 9 days out what that will look like. But I wouldn't expect to see any changes on the batting front, and I would expect to see England go in with a frontline spinner. They've said that Bethel is not a spinning option, that he's in consideration as a batsman. They've obviously got the get out clause of saying, well, we put him in because between him and Root, they fulfil a job with the ball for spin. But I don't see that happening. I think they'll go in with Dawson. And India, I mean, who knows? But Bumrah's got to play for me. Siraj has got to play for me. Washington Sundar probably out-bowled Ravindra Jadeja in this test match. So you'd suggest that he's there, and then it's do they make any changes to the balance of their side? Would be my call. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I mean, look, on India, I still think, Washington Sundar, if you're going to argue that he's your number one spinner, or at least your second spinner there, then and you want to play the 2 spinners, then I think Nitish Kumar Reddy. I know he got a couple of wickets, did contribute with the ball, looked actually okay, and certainly in that at times in that game. But I don't know. I just still think you could be leaning into your specialists more. I'm going to stick by that. That's what I've said all series. I think that there's certainly a case that they could do that. Carol Neer, I'm interested in, because again, I think he's looked good. I think he's looked the part, but he hasn't been able to kind of kick on from some of his starts. So I wonder if they sit there with Siddharthan and with Dhruv Jurel and a few other options and go, maybe it's time for someone else to have an option. I don't know. That it'll be really interesting to see, as you say, if they kind of, I do feel like it would be an overreaction to sort of suddenly come and make a whole bunch of changes, because they've been very, very good, I think, in this whole series. I don't think they need to go and do that.
Yeah, the one we've not talked about is we don't know about Rishabh Pant's fitness. Obviously, didn't keep wicket for most of the Test match. Was off the field. Didn't field at all because he got an external injury, so no reason for him to do so. That creates a potential problem for them. You'd say it's a like for like swap. Jarrell coming in if he's injured, but it isn't really a like for like swap because Jarrell's not going to have the impact that he has with the bat. As good a player as he is, and he could easily bat 5 or 6. I think Jarrell, but he's not going to have that same fear factor for England coming out to bat at 5 as Rishabh Pant. So That'll be the other thing that India might need to consider, because if Jarrell comes in, it almost sort of weakens the firepower in their batting, if not maybe the output that you might get from a top 6 or 7 that contains him as a keeper batter.
I did see Shubman Gill some positive comments around Punt, saying that they've had the scans and it wasn't anything major, and so hopefully they seemed optimistic that he would play. Just quickly before we finish up, I do want to say, you mentioned Liam Dawson and Bashir before. You often ask me, about Bashir, and I think this is a massive shame that this has happened to him. I mean, obviously he's just had that kind of match-winning moment, but I think even more so than that, he's shown some really positive signs, I think, in this series of, I know maybe he hasn't got the wickets and the output that would reflect that in the way that he might have in other series where I think he's bowled worse. But I think that he's been making real progress on his flight and his drift, and it seems like that's something he's really, I don't know, it seems like something he's worked on, because I feel that it's something that's certainly improved over the series. That was a lovely delivery to get KL Rahul in the first innings, with the way that kind of drifted away and took the edge. Yeah, I just think he's looked a better bowler and looked more the part to me. I know he still bowls those, bad balls that get hit away, and that's going to be the biggest challenge for him. We've talked about that a lot, that, being able to bowl consistent areas and build that pressure. But I think he's been able to, again, do that a bit better in this series than he has in the past. So, I'm sort of disappointed on that level that he won't get these next couple of tests to kind of continue that, because, it's, I don't know, it's nice for me as a spinner to kind of see that development. And I think that's what England fans have been talking about, and a lot of people have been saying, when are we going to see this from Bashir? We're getting, we might be getting the results a little bit in terms of the wickets column, but are we actually getting an improved performance? Is this a guy that we want to look to long term? And I think he's shown in this series some signs that, yes, he clearly is still a young guy, and he is improving his game. So that's a bit of a shame.
Yeah, look, to be continued. I think my views on it. I think they'll stick with him, and I think he'll come back in. They rate him, they want him in the side. I think they value his contribution. And let's not forget, his release point is really high, and that's what got all that overspin on the ball that spun back into the stumps that took the final wicket in this Test match. That was a joke to any Indian listeners or viewers. But look, I rate him. I really think he'll get a couple of 100 Test wickets, because I think they'll stick with him through the Ashes. And if they have success there, they'll stick with him through the summer. Then all of a sudden, he's played 30-odd Test matches, and he's a fixture in the side. And as you said, I think he's developed that carom ball that we'd not seen before. And then, control-wise, again, we'll come back to it. He's probably out-bowled at times opposition spinners of a high class. Not consistently, but that will come for him, I believe. So I'm sure this will be a debate that we'll revisit. As we said, we'll be back on the weekend, Sunday, hopefully with an almost full complement to talk about that Australia-West Indies pink ball Test match. Mitchell Starc, the quickest fifer ever in Test cricket, 15 deliveries. We will save all of the superlatives for Michael to deliver, I think, for that. But we will be back to discuss that and New Zealand's white ball stuff as well on a This Week in Cricket that we'll record on Sunday morning UK time, Sunday evening in New Zealand. But for now, it is good night and God bless from me and Stu on the Top Order podcast, and we'll see you next time. Good night.